Hello, this is Darrell Castle with today's Castle Report. Today is Friday, Good Friday, as a matter of fact, April 2nd, in the year of our Lord 2021. Since this is Good Friday, then this Sunday must be Easter. That's right, the celebration of the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. Today, I will be talking about the ever-growing likelihood of nationwide internal passports being imposed on us, the once free American people. The Castle family is doing fine this Easter weekend as Joan and I are planning to attend the sunrise service at our church Sunday morning. He lives, we believe, and since he does, we can face tomorrow and the growing Stalinist threat of the new government commonly known as the Biden administration. The family daughter will celebrate Easter in her own fashion in her adopted home of Los Angeles, California. Technological innovation is evident everywhere today, but sometimes progress goes in reverse. When that happens, we forget things like what made us free, what made us prosperous. Sometimes technology actually inhibits progress, and then we become willing to trade our birthright of liberty for a mess of porridge. For example, the New York governor is implementing right now the hated Cold War Stalinist internal passport system that prevents freedom of movement within the state of New York. The Biden administration is contracting with private companies to create a nationwide internal passport system. What do I mean by internal passport? You will need a form of passport, like a passport we now use to visit a foreign country, just to travel within the United States. Private firms are obviously being used to distance the administration from the publicity and to avoid constitutional issues, just as government has long used the tech companies as fronts for the denial of free speech and to enact their censorship and propaganda. It now will use private firms to prevent freedom of movement within the United States. This is not a theory. It's not a theory at all. It is happening right now. I was introduced to a very simple version of it yesterday when, via email, I received instructions for attending the New York Yankees home opener baseball game at Yankee Stadium. Arrive early, the email said, because there will be long lines. No one will without proof of vaccination or a negative test within the proscribed time period will be admitted. That kind of thing is just a beginning, but it must be stopped. It must be resisted with everything we have. It doesn't matter what you think about the vaccines. That's not the issue. The issue is the acclimatizing of people to the idea that to participate in society, they need to comply with government mandates and obtain government permission. This will create a caste system, which we are required to welcome here in America. Naomi Wolf, interviewed on The Next Revolution with Steve Hilton, puts it like this, quote, "I am not overstating this. I can't say it forcefully enough. This is literally the end of human liberty in the West if this plan unfolds as planned. Vaccine passports sound like a fine thing if you don't understand what these platforms can do. It's not about the vaccine. It's not about the virus. It's about your data. Once this rolls out, you don't have a choice about being part of the system. What people have to understand is that any other functionality can be loaded onto that platform with no problem at all. What that means is that it can be merged with your PayPal account, with your digital currency. Microsoft is already talking about merging it with payment plans. Your networks can be sucked up. It geolocates you wherever you go. Your credit history can be included. All your medical history can be included. Naomi is not the only prominent person sounding the alarm about what's being installed. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Republican from Georgia, speaking from the House floor on Wednesday afternoon, said, quote, "Perhaps more troubling than the ruling class telling Americans they must receive a vaccine in order to participate in normal life is the prospect of governments colluding with monopolistic corporations to accrue private health data from American citizens and restrict their lives accordingly." She went on to say that a vaccine passport is Biden's mark of the beast. Any company that requires one is engaging in corporate communism, as she put it. Vaccine passports would mandate your ability to be able to travel, your ability to be able to go to events, your ability to be able to buy and sell under the guise of trying to keep everyone safe. I would say that the better term is fascism, whereby government controls and taxes corporations, which then do government's will. Benito Mussolini put it like this, quote, fascism should more appropriately be called corporatism because it is a merger of state and corporate power, end quote. The Washington Post, intending to serve as the government's representative, reports that the White House is moving to soothe privacy and equity concerns about the development and deployment of so-called vaccine passports that would enable the bearer to prove they've been inoculated against the coronavirus, end quote. The way the Post describes the government's intentions is that they want to strike a balance by declaring the private sector will lead the effort to design the certificates while promising federal oversight to ensure that citizens are treated fairly. A White House advisor says that he knows it's a tricky subject, but he is certain that people who have been vaccinated will want to demonstrate that vaccination in various forms. My personal view, my opinion of the Post and the advisor comments is that their words are just gobbledygook at best and complete horse manure at worst. The government is joining with the corporate world because it wants to hide behind the corporate veil while it savages the Constitution at will. The Silicon Valley tech giants are used to this approach because they have been helping the government savage the Constitution for at least 2 decades now. These companies, with the full cooperation of each succeeding administration, operate as the authoritarian gatekeepers of information and communication. They entwine themselves into our lives to such an extent that we come to believe that we can't exist without them. They suppress information that doesn't assist their preferred political candidate or political ideology. They deplatform all voices that do not compliantly accept the ruling elite position on each and every issue of the day. At least it's not the government, people say, so private companies can do what they want. That's nonsense as well, because authoritarian rule by gigantic companies controlled by government is a definite threat to our liberty. It must be stopped. Remember that right now the government is handing over the reins of your liberty to selected private corporations. We are now in the earliest stages of this, or in Doug Casey's words, we're in the eye of the hurricane. If we allow this project to go forward uncontested, we will have surrendered control over our own private lives forever. Privacy concerns cannot be overstated, folks. You will be required to have a cell phone app, which will be provided free by the federal government, which of course is just corporate welfare by another name. You will be required to have that app available for inspection wherever you go. Every time you are scanned, it will create a digital record of your presence. It will allow the downloading of all information about you, from what sites you visit to the most intimate details of your life. You will no longer be a sovereign individual, and instead you will have allowed yourself to be converted into a wholly owned subsidiary of the all-powerful state. Mask mandates and lockdowns on the local level, for the most part, are just local politicians trying to use their best efforts and follow their leaders' instructions to serve their people. On the highest level, they are at their core about government, expanding power, giving the most control-obsessed, power-mad, lying hypocrites among the human population the self-righteous ability to dictate the behavior of everyone else on earth. Fortunately, there are some resistors to the idea of vaccine passports. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis held a press conference to announce that he would be taking executive action to prohibit vaccine passports in the state of Florida. Quote, we are not supporting doing any vaccine passports in the state of Florida. We want it available for all, but mandated for none. We will not have COVID vaccines mandatory in Florida, end quote. DeSantis has resisted federal mandates in Florida since the virus protocols began. Now he resists the Orwellian concept of internal passports, concocted by what passes for the Biden administration. The governor said, quote, it's completely unacceptable if you want to go to a movie theater. Should you have to show that? No. You want to go to a game or a theme park? No. We're not supportive of that, end quote. Earlier this week, I watched a video interview with Edward Snowden from his hideout in Russia. Mr. Snowden talked about how easy it would be for hackers, both government and private, to hack into cell phones and gather information or plant information. There are companies protected by the governments of the world designed to gather information on or from any person or any group that the government sees as problematic, Mr. Snowden said. Remember what Orwell told us about politics back in 1948 when he wrote his book, 1984. Politics is simple, he said, the acquisition and retention of power. How can I acquire more power? How can I retain the power I have? For the politician to gain more power, two conditions are needed. Number one, the people over whom we exercise power must be divided. Number two, the second condition is that the people must fear some outside threat. If these two conditions exist, people will give their leaders latitude in how they are governed and controlled. I will add to Mr. Orwell's words that governments constantly work to make sure those two conditions always exist. People must be focused by their leaders on something other than the fact that their leaders are stealing their property and their liberty. The few spread fear, anxiety, and terror to the many. The many believe them and offer their blood and their treasure in exchange for leadership and guidance out of the fear and into some promised land at which they never seem to arrive. Finally, folks, governments are made up of some of the most despicable people on this earth, not just our government, all of them. But this is Easter. It's about Jesus, not about the government. Happy Easter, folks. I hope you can enjoy it with your families. At least that's the way I see it. Till next time, this is Darrell Castle. Thanks for listening.